What's going on, people? It's the Black Trekker. I'm making this video because I want to address something that has perplexed many fellow Trekkies for the longest. And now we're going to get down into the nitty gritty. Like, share, and subscribe. I appreciate all of your participation in this developing channel. Is Starfleet a military? Many people have always stated no. Starfleet is not a military. Starfleet is a purely exploration-based organization. Well, I'm here to counter that with sound, logical points and also historical points and also real-world points. We can talk about this in the comment section. Let me know. Firstly, let's understand what the role of Starfleet is. Starfleet is a military arm of the Federation. It's for defense, protection of the Federation, Federation worlds, citizens, Federation property, etc., etc., and etc. How does this pair with the real world? Well, the U.S. military, the Department of Defense, protects the land of the United States, the air of the United States, and the waters of the United States. Sounds familiar. It's broken down into different departments, different divisions. You got the Department of the Navy, Department of the Air Force, Marines, Space Force now. It's laughable, I know. Space Force and the Army. Now, although the Federation, Starfleet, doesn't have it like that, I'm sure they have components that are similar. The point of it is that what does Starfleet represent? The armed forces. And Gene Roddenberry, when he made Star Trek, Starfleet was a representation of the military, and Starfleet Command was the chain of command, like the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And the President of the Federation was the representation of the U.S. government at large, the United States. So, getting that all out the way, the Federation is the United States in Star Trek. And the Klingon Empire was our Cold War adversaries, which was the USSR, Russia. So, you have real world context, and then you also have science fiction context. The Federation, the UFP, the Federation of Planets, is the United States. All the individual states, all 50 states. Now, true indeed, the Federation is comprised of 150 worlds. But, again, we're going off of science fiction. Now, many people will cite that James Kirk said that the Federation is not a military, that Starfleet is not a military. Well, the whole entire organization of Starfleet is predicated on military rank structure. There are no civilian experts. None. I have never seen civilian experts that had the authority to command around military personnel. Meaning like, take this ship here, take this ship there, take this ship everywhere. No. The only people that had authority were like ambassadors or governors of a particular region of space. So let's understand that. That only occurs with civilian officials in the federal government, which would be the Federation of Planets. So let's kill any nonsense about, oh, well, it's not a military. Well, military personnel respect the chain of command and they listen to people that are civilians. So let's understand that. Then, in the next generation, Captain Jean-Luc Picard stated that the Federation wasn't a military. Starfleet wasn't a military. Directly emulating what Kirk said. But let's look at it like this. The interactions with the Klingons required military force. Interactions with the Romulans' military force. There was no diplomats there. When Jean-Luc Picard encountered Tomalak, which was a captain from the Romulan Empire, the Romulans had not been seen for 100 years. Did they get in contact with Starfleet diplomatic corps and said we need to have an ambassador come out here and try to negotiate things with the Romulans? Nope. It was a mano a mano, captain against captain. The Romulans saw what the Federation had, which was the Galaxy-class starship, and it was like, okay, well, it's bigger, still much smaller than our ships, but bigger, but comparable in weapon systems. Now let's talk about the obvious. Comparable in weapon systems. So let's see. The Enterprise D had phasers and photon torpedoes, very powerful weapon systems, able to level cities. This is a ship of exploration. This is a ship to explore gaseous phenomenon and interstellar particles and planetary bodies. What is it doing with weapon systems? The weapon systems are for defense. That's what everyone says. But the weapon systems can also be used for offensive natures, and it can cause and inflict major damage. This is seen in Star Trek, the original series. This is also seen in Star Trek Next Generation. The weapons can be used to inflict massive damage on a planet's surface, or an unsuspecting station, or people that are technologically less advanced. So let's stop with saying that it's not a military. Let's also look at the ships. Have you ever noticed that all of the ships in Starfleet start off as USS? USS is a designation that's given and derived from a government. The United Federations of Planets, aka the United States of America. So, it is derived from governments. So with that being said, what does the U and the S stand for? United States Ship. Enterprise. So when people say this tomfoolery that it's not a military vessel, that's what is used on all military vessels. Or in the words of Chekhov, you're boarding this vessel. This vessel. Right. And then also let's look at it like the United States counterparts. Let's look at Great Britain. Great Britain or Canada. HMS. Her Majesty's Ship. That is only a designation given by a government entity, a government official. So with that being said, this is not some kind of civilian ran vessel. Prime example, look at Carnival. It's not addressed as USS. It's just Oasis. You look at freighters that deliver packages from across the seas, across the oceans. They have the name of the vessel. It's no USS. All other nations have something indicative. Great Britain, Canada, the Middle East, like UAE. It'll be UAE and then it'll be the name of the vessel. Now, why is that? Because it's affiliated with the government. So it is absolutely bonkers and ridiculous to say it's not a military vessel. Then also let's look at rank structure. In order for you to be able to run a ship and be in charge of the crew, you have to retain what rank? Captain. And I'm not talking about some cutter, or I'm not talking about a dinghy or a little sailing boat yacht. Anybody can be a captain if they own it. So, no. In order for you to be a real, live, official captain, you have to be affiliated with the military. Point blank, period. Now, some will say, oh, well, what about tour ships, cruise liners? Again, most of those cruise liners, those captains, about 90% of them were in the military. So they earned their rank as actual, real, live, unequivocal captains. Look at Jean-Luc Picard. Have you ever looked at the 4 pips that are on the side? Those are the recognized insignia of what a captain is. That parallels with real life, which What are O4? An O4 is a colonel. And in naval terms, on an aircraft carrier, a naval aircraft carrier, an O4 is a captain, which is a full-bird colonel in any other branch. Then what do you have? A commander is an O3. And an O3 has the silver leaf. So it pairs with reality. It's a military vessel, point blank, period. And those people that try to say it's not don't want to look at real world examples. They don't want to look at fictional examples. And they don't even want to look at what the original creator of the show intended. Because he would have never started off. If it wasn't to show the perils of the U.S. against the Russians and the U.S. military against the Russian military, then he could have just made it a ship with Joe Bo Snuffy on a regular spaceship, a cargo ship, traveling the galaxy. And it would have been such and such Hermes or whatever, such and such Green Boat, whatever the name of the ship. Or the USS, or the fuck off, whatever. But it didn't. It was a USS such and such. Now again, can smaller ships have the emblem and the insignia of USS? Absolutely. But those ships are affiliated with the government. Government ships, which mean they follow a military hierarchy. Let's understand that. HMS, Great Britain, Canada, parts of the Caribbean, that's following a government entity. USS is following United States government entity. So that's what it is. These ships wouldn't have weapon systems that could level cities if it wasn't correlated to a military. No civilian ships are going to be that well armed. I don't care what nobody say. It ain't going to happen. Period. Point blank. Then the level of competency. You got people in different fields. Yes, you're going to have engineers on the ship. Yes, you're going to have scientists on the ship. But all of those engineers and scientists and botanists and cellular biologists, they all have what? Ranks. Or as in the Navy, they have rakes. And in the Navy, they have rates. I don't know if Gene Roddenberry knew exactly about the Navy rates, but he knew nonetheless that it needed to be organized in a hierarchy. And that hierarchy is a military chain of command. Matter of fact, in the original Star Trek series, they had Commodores. Commodores are innately correlated to the Navy. But it was more prevalent in like World War I and World War II that commandants actually were in existence. Now, in the Marines, they do have a commandant of the Marine Corps, but that's like one person. That's not like the whole Marines. They have one. So with that being said, let's get serious. Look at the uniforms. Everything has to be efficient. Everything has to be crisp. Everything has to be presentable. No margin for error, no margin for slacking. None of that is accepted. Now, why is that? That's not about being professional. That's about maintaining one's tact, one's military bearing. This is all stemming from following the protocols of something that's been around for centuries, like an organized professional military. That's what Starfleet is. Starfleet Academy, another word, academy, which is correlated to a military structure. That's what it's about. Matter of fact, Section 31. Section 31 is a military arm of Starfleet. It's their military intelligence. That's exactly what it is. It's their special forces. That's what it is. So when somebody says that it's not a military, then why does Starfleet have special forces divisions? Why does Starfleet have military intelligence? That's a key word in the word. Military intelligence. If it's not a military, why has it got military intelligence in it? If it's not a military, why does it have a spec ops, black project having organization that very few people know about? but yet it was in the charter. Ooh, interesting point. In the United States Charter, it talks about militias and militaries. Come on now. The Charter of the United States predates Star Trek by well over 150 years. Where do you think they got it from? Let's get serious. You guys got to pay attention to what's going on in Star Trek. Star Trek is a representation of the whole entire world back in the 1960s, and it was expanded upon in the 1970s and 80s and 90s, etc. But that's what it is. It's always been a military, you know. But anyway, with that being said, that's just my take on it. I think that Starfleet is a military arm. Am I saying that Starfleet can't do exploration? Absolutely not. They do exploration quite well. They have cataloged and researched and met new alien life forms on television for decades. They're quite proficient at it. But to say that they're not a military organization would be like to say that a man doesn't have the capability to inflict damage on someone. He absolutely does. It's not just for defense. It's not just to react after someone attacks you. No, Starfleet has technology that can attack you first and keep you down. But they try to be diplomatic and they try to be respectful of cultures. That's their method of operation. But make no mistake, Starfleet is a military. It has always been a military. And if it wasn't a military, it would have never been able to fight off the Klingons. It would have never been able to defend itself against the Romulans. It would have never been able to deal with the Borg or Species 8472. It would have never been able to defeat the Dominion because it would have been too far behind the curve. Peaceful exploration and catalog and stuff would have been made Starfleet an easy victim. Another good point about why Starfleet was a military, why they got all these ships? Why you need all these ships to explore the galaxy? A few dozen, a few hundred should be enough. But you can't project power with a handful of ships. You need a navy. Matter of fact, in this J.J. Abrams movie, Star Trek, the one that came out in 2009, Captain Christopher Pike said, and this is another universe version, Starfleet is an armada. An armada is a group task force of warships. Warships. That's what an armada is. So with that being said, it ain't nothing completely altruistic about it. It's an armada dealing with a foe or an enemy or to quell an enemy. That's what it is. And then also another example of who would say if Starfleet was the actual military. Q. In the first episode, Encounter at Farpoint in TNG, Q mentioned about the fact that humanity hasn't changed. You're still wearing these uniforms, these military uniforms. Picard countered by saying, we stopped wearing these costumes. But Q was like, it's still the same. You still have rank structures. You still have chains of command. You still name ships after presidents and bodies of water. And you're still governed by the trappings of your government. Q is omnipotent almost. Q has had a full-fledged overview of the Federation. He knows everything about it and what they try to perceive themselves to be and what they really and truly are. Which is a Federation, is a military. The Q see it. The Romulans see it. You think you're going to convince the Romulan Star Empire that Starfleet is not a military? Get out of here. Yeah, right. You think you're going to convince the Klingon Defense Force that the Starfleet is not a military? Get out of here. You think you're going to convince the Borg that resistance is resistance and futile? That the Starfleet is not a military and they don't got ships that are dedicated for war and battle? No. The only people that might perceive the Starfleet is not a military are people that live on Earth. And like Benjamin Sisko said, Captain Benjamin Sisko said, it's hard to do anything negative when you live in paradise. When you live on Earth, Earth is a garden. Earth is perfect. So it's naturally, from their perspective, oh, it's not a military. But real talk, it is. Also, did you notice that in Star Trek Deep Space Nine, when they were worried about the changelings coming to Earth, they locked down Earth. Not the civilian government, the military, Starfleet. How does Starfleet have the ability to impose martial law? The only organization, the only entity of the freaking government that can impose martial law without consent of Congress is the military. So, on Star Trek Deep Space Nine, the military imposed martial law all over Earth. Come on now, let's get serious. And they said in the episode it's a military lockdown. And this was from the CNC, the Chief of Naval Command, that it was a military lockdown. So that right there shows you that it's contradictions in the canon. But if you look at it from a logical standpoint, it's a military. Just look at it like this. The president of the Federation gets in contact with the Joint Chiefs, which is in charge of Starfleet. Starfleet gets in contact with the captains. The captains are in charge of all the ships in the fleet. The captains will immense power from all those ships that have photon torpedoes and phasers. Bam. All the ships start off with USS. That means that's a designation of a military vessel to a government. These are historical facts. So let's please nix the statement about it's not a military. Doesn't mean I don't like Star Trek any less. No, I do. But it's predicated around military service and the protection of the Federation. Anyway, thanks for listening. Hit me with your comments in the comment section where you disagree. If there's any squids out there, let me know how it pairs with the real Navy. And with that being said, like, share, and subscribe, and live long and prosper. Peace out.